Even if we accept that no perfect electoral districting system exists, it does not mean that we must be content with the status quo. The proposals I've offered get us much closer to a system that is both fair and, perhaps more importantly, perceived to be fair by the wider electorate. This surely is the sort of goal that everyone in this House and beyond would agree with. Benchmarking our existing electoral bounds against these that have passed mathematical muster would improve transparency and make these maps more acceptable to everyone involved. Of course, perhaps we should take a step back and question the underlying political values that may have led us to even have to worry about the cancer of intentional gerrymandering. If gerrymandering does truly become endemic, do we as a nation accept this? Gerrymandering effectively means that the votes of those who happen to live in certain geographies are inadvertently given lesser weight, simply by dint of the districting system. Do we wish to be known as a modern democracy that does not aspire to ensure that the voices of all our citizens be heard equally?
Ms. Poa, Mr. Jamus, have spoken about suspicions of gerrymandering and reducing the potential of gerrymandering and used the word gerrymandering quite a few times. Let me address this directly. First, let me touch on the EBRC's process and composition, which has allowed the committee to do its work independently and objectively. First, the EBRC does not have access to voting information and hence does not make its recommendation based on voting patterns. The EBRC does not consult the PAP or any other political party. Party politics do not come into this exercise. The EBRC comprises senior civil servants with no party allegiance. Therefore, unlike other countries where political parties are involved in the boundary drawing process, EBRC's compositions and processes are insulated from party politics. Hence, we do not have the horse trading and gerrymandering that have taken place in other countries. And I must say, if we get all political parties involved, present or future, it will politicize the whole process and not bring us forward, but bring us backwards. Ms. Hazel suggested that the EBRC be chaired by a High Court judge, and so did Mr. Pritam and Mr. Jamus, to enhance the independence of the EBRC. We have thought about this carefully, and we have looked at the experiences of other countries. And we don't think that this will resolve the concern about political interference. Other jurisdictions that have done so continue to face allegations and doubts concerning the independence of their electoral boundary delineation process. Their debate instead sinks into questions on who appoints the judge and whether the judge has any political leaning or bias. The judiciary ends up getting drawn into the political debate, and the judiciary is politicized. Besides, there are no legal issues in the EBRC's work which require a judicial official to weigh in. What is required is political neutrality, integrity, and objectivity, which I trust all my public service officers have, whether they are in the EBRC or not, for them to discharge their duties without fear and favor.
So I should clarify that there are in fact two forms of gerrymandering, intentional and unintentional. Minister Chan assured this House that there is in fact no intentional gerrymandering as pursued by the EBRC. Now, even if we accept this position, it does not exclude the very real possibility that natural movements in the electorate, 200,000 in fact, as Minister Chan just shared, might inadvertently give rise to an unintentional gerrymandered outcome. That's why I suggested introducing scientifically supported tools to produce benchmark maps as reference. So my question is, what objections does the PMO have to instructing the EBRC to adopt this approach in Singapore, given how it has been applied, not just in theory, but in practice by jurisdictions elsewhere?
First point, I'm not sure I'm an expert to distinguish what you refer to as intentional versus unintentional. As I've mentioned in my speech, no system can ever claim that it is perfect, nor will satisfy everyone who may choose to contest in an election. The question is, what is the purpose of the EBRC and who must it serve? The fundamental question before us today is this: should the EBRC serve the interests of political parties, or should the interests of EBRC be to serve the interests of our people? Should EBRC, as its primary goal, serve the political interests of different parties, or should the primary goal of EBRC to serve the interests of Singapore and Singaporeans? And what are the goals of Singapore and Singaporeans? First, have an MP that can take care of them. Second, have an MP that can represent them. Third, have a parliament that can form a functioning government that can take Singapore forward and look after Singapore and Singaporeans. So I will not go into whether it's intentional, unintentional, because I cannot understand your definition of and distinction between that. But I want to iterate one point. We do not give EBRC, and EBRC have no access to the polling results. We have no idea what the polling results or the voting pattern of the 200,000 people that have moved. Neither do we have data on how the new electors in every election cycle will vote. Our goal is to make sure that every division is roughly a microcosm of Singapore, so that we have elections and people conduct, and when the elections is conducted, people consider the national interests, so that we don't have sectoral interests that delineates, that defines a particular division like other countries. We are open to all kinds of tools as suggested by Mr. Jamus, but actually it's quite interesting. Some of the ideas that you have mentioned, and I listened carefully, by one of your ideas, your suggestion is quite interesting. And I think fundamentally you agree with us. But you may also not like the result. And that is this, that every electoral division should be a microcosm of Singapore. And you say that we should actually use mathematical models to adjust the population so that they reflect the national pattern. First of all, if we use people's voting preference to adjust the model, won't you agree with us that that is precisely gerrymandering? Second, if we indeed do that, and every division is exactly the same, then every election in every division should give the vote share to the incumbent that's roughly the same. And is that the outcome that we are striving for? So I think have a care on how and what we learn from others and how we use models. We are open to exploring all kinds of models. By the end of the day, is fairness defined by the process, or is fairness determined by the outcome as to whether it is favorable to me or not?
Just a quick clarification on my part. What I did say, in fact, was a suggestion about adjusting by mathematical methods the bounds, which is the shape of these electoral boundaries. It is, in fact, uninformed by actual voting preferences, which, as Minister Chan said, the EBRC has no access to.